it was more of a moving test.
Let me just make sure that I've got like the motion documents.
Forming and then it, yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Chair Will Hornaday, and I'd like to welcome you to the July Historic Resources Commission meeting. The HRC is a quasi-judicial body that is governed by the North Carolina General Statutes and the City of Asheville Unified Development Ordinance and Buncombe County Ordinance. We're authorized to hear requests for certificate of appropriateness for alterations, demolitions, new construction, and other work within historic districts for the alteration and demolition of historic landmarks and other duties, including preliminary review of subdivisions as specified in the ordinances of the HRC. I will now ask commissioner members and staff to introduce themselves. We'll start with Commissioner Holt.
Amy Moxley, architect.
Sue Oliva, American historian.
Will Hornaday from Albemarle Park.
Humphrey from Montford.
Rob Mays from Montford.
Bill Roberts from Montreat.
Amy Garst, background in architecture.
Hans Scobie, South Asheville.
Alex Cole, HRC staff liaison.
Janice Ashley, legal liaison to the HRC.
Thank you. We'll now consider the minutes from last month's meeting of the HRC. The meetings include finding of fact and conclusion of law. Are there any corrections? Hearing none, if we're ready to entertain a motion.
A motion to accept the minutes from the meeting last month.
Is there a second? Second from Commissioner Moxley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes. Public hearings. We'll now begin the evidentiary hearings of the items listed on the agenda. As a quasi-judicial proceeding, the HRC is not setting policy, nor are we soliciting public opinion on the desirability of an application. The HRC hears and considers evidence presented and applies the standards set forth in the standards for the specific historic district or landmark for that application. The HRC must make its decision upon competent, material, and substantial evidence to determine the facts of the hearing. The HRC will use judgment and discretion to apply the standards contained in the relevant standards to the facts. The commissioners in voting for an item will not have a fixed opinion, not susceptible to change, have a conflict of interest, have engaged in ex parte communication regarding the application. Now, some rules for speaking. It's open to the public, this meeting, but participation is limited to interested parties who wish to provide comment testimony regarding the proposal. If you'll be speaking as a witness, please focus on the facts and how they relate to the relevant historic district standards, not personal preference or opinion. Witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. At this time, we're going to administer the oath for all individuals who intend to present testimony today. So those who are going to speak on an issue, stand, please, and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing for a certificate of appropriateness or preliminary subdivision approval before the Historic Resources Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Y'all can have a seat. And now we're going to move to our first public hearing item. Nope. Yeah. Yeah.
Motion for.
We're going to, 26 Grindstaff Drive has requested a continuance to August. Is there a motion for that request?
Make a motion to continue till August.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Moxley, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes.
Thank you, Chair Hornaday and members of the commission for your time today. First application is for 70 Cherokee Road in Albemarle Park. Building of an existing retaining wall and part of the patio that's along the front elevation of this house. It's a little bit hard to see because of all the vegetation that's in front of the wall. So I'll just bear with me. I did get some additional photos from the applicant that are, a little bit closer up of the wall on the left, and then the stone on the patio. You're looking at the top of it on the right-hand side. The site plan is on this slide, as well as the proposed new stone. When I met with the applicant, I did talk to them about reusing as much historic material as possible, which is standard practice in historic preservation work. It is a structural wall, of course, and is attached to the foundation of the house, so there may be some challenges with reusing some of the stone or any of the stone, I'm not sure. But I noted in my staff report, I don't have, of course, any concern about repairing the wall. And I should back up and say that Albemarle Park is kind of unique in that typically we'd review like repair to something like a landscape feature like a wall as minor work in some of our other districts, but in Albemarle Park, if it exceeds 15% of the wall, then it has to come to you all. And the landscape features are very sensitive and important in all districts, but this district has a planned landscape. I have no idea how long this patio and this wall have been there, but it is consistent with other walls found in the neighborhood. There's a slide here showing some other examples that the applicants shared with us, which they're pretty naturalized. And so the only concern I'm noting really about the wall itself is that little concern that the proposed new material is more regular in shape than what the composition of the wall currently is. So I think that makes it more important to try to source a stone that is more consistent with what's there and more irregular in form. I know that they are trying to do a veneer, and because it's a structural wall, I'll let them speak to the constructability of a wall using some other types of stone if they've looked at anything else. I did also note in my application, after the application initially came in, I communicated with the property owner about a tree that needs to be removed, so that was added a little bit later. I noted in here that tree replacement is required because it wasn't initially proposed in the application, but the applicant has since communicated to us that they're fine with planting a tree. I think that the tree in question is maybe shown in the incorrect place on the site plan, so we might need a corrected site plan. I think it's to the left of the house versus the right where it's shown on the site plan. But otherwise, I think the tree clearly needs to be removed and don't have any issue with that. So those are my thoughts to you all. Do you have any questions for me?
Staff?
Sorry, I don't know if were you here yet when Dan from our Cape department came and said our mics were still like having to get really close? So thank you all for your attention to that. It just is hard to hear on the live stream if we don't get up close and personal with them.
Rob?
I'm sorry, it was just whether the patio was getting larger. It sounds like the answer is no.
Other questions for staff? Going once.
Thank you.
Now have the applicant come up, introduce themselves, and talk about this project.
Jessica Van Riggen Mortar, and Ethan McWilliams is also with me, who's helping with this redesign plan. So sort of the backstory here is that some damage was done to the house where there was concern about the foundation. So when we went to look at that, what we realized is that this wall is sort of faltering and needs to be shored up to protect the foundation of the home. So we are wanting to come up with a plan to be able to do that so that we can also repairs that need to happen at this house from the tree damage. So Ethan has been working with folks to source stone to look as similar as possible to this stacked stone wall. So they basically suggested these stones and in these colors to look as much as possible like the stone that's there. The stone on the top will have to be lifted and some backfill. And our plan is to work with the stones that are there for that.
For the patio surface?
For the patio surface.
Okay.
But in terms of that front wall, the geotech and structural engineers didn't feel like it would be structurally stable to try to take that wall apart because it's built into the hill and the house is built into it. So
there's a geotechnical engineering report included, and on page 4 of that, they make a recommendation that we don't demolish the existing wall completely because of its proximity to the home's foundation and the composition of the soil and how unstable it is. And so that, not being able to remove that completely, we'd be able to take it down to grade, more or less. Well, not even to that, just barely down enough so that we can backfill over top of it. That does not supply us with enough of the existing stone to clad the new wall. And so we made an attempt and contacted several stone yards with example photos to try to find, okay, what can we, purchasable, kind of acquirable stone palettes can mix to, one, match the kind of color palette, because there's beiges, browns, and grays, and then also to match kind of rectangular nature and then size variation between big and small. Because the existing wall seems to be a kind of like a dry stack, just stacked up. Gravity itself is holding it together to try to.
Questions for the applicants about the wall as that they're describing right now? We're still going to talk about the tree in a second, I think.
So you have Coyote Gray and Mount Mitchell. Are you using both of those? You're going to mix them?
Correct. We'll mix them.
And none of the existing stone is getting reused on site,
That is correct.
yeah,
except for the patio.
I don't know if I need to understand the process, but it sounds like you're leaving the wall as it is and digging behind it and putting in structural masonry behind it and then going higher.
So, yeah, so it will it'll be right in front of it. But yeah, we'll be digging down to good soil that's compacted and put footings on it and build up tight to the existing.
You're basically building another wall around the circumference of the existing one.
Not the existing one, a new form is being put in, a
Yeah.
stabilized geotechnical.
A cast-in-place engineered wall.
Size of these two, can you scroll that up one picture? Yeah. Well, just the rocks I'm looking at right now. That's fine. Are the size of those rocks comparable to the existing size of rocks? Or are these, sometimes you see them and they're brickish maximum.
Right, so there are walls on the, yes is the short answer to that.
Same-ish size is what's
Same-ish
there.
size, there might be the odd, large, really big one that we won't source, but in keeping with the overall shape and size variation, these two stone pallets hit that.
Right.
Not like bricks, but you can even see kind of in this example that there's some variation, right? Some skinny flat rocks and some bigger rocks.
And I think it's worth mentioning too, these are, example photos from the supplier on a sample board. We have control over as well, selecting stones.
With more texture on the face?
Correct.
Okay.
This is veneer, though, going over CMU?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not CMU, cast in place.
Cast in place, okay.
On like finishing the top of the wall?
With the existing pavers. We anticipate that the footprint of the wall will not grow, by any sizable amount that we couldn't just reuse the existing pavers.
Other questions for the applicant regarding wall/patio? So to sum up, what I think I'm hearing on this is it's going to be rougher facing than we see. It's going to be peppering of the two colors. They're going to be large in places and small, just like that. None of the existing stone is getting reused. That's all heading somewhere else, right?
If I can mention
Yeah.
one more thing, when you mentioned stone veneer, these are 4-inch stones, so there will be an aspect of depth as well.
Okay. Staff, does that help alleviate some of the staff concerns for the district about using rougher faced stones, handpicking rougher faced stones for this effort?
My concern, but if that's just
Because of the structure, because of the engineer report on that. Okay. All right. Anything else on patios and walls? Let's talk about a tree.
On us. So the plan is to remove that, and then we're happy to plant
Scroll up one picture. Just above where you were. There was a arborist report.
Oh, that was at the bottom. Yes, okay. So yes, from Earthworks, an arborist letter.
In that placement on page 2, it might be on the opposite corner of the lot.
On the other side of the house, so I can adjust that.
Any questions about the red maple from the commission? Okay. Is there any other questions for the applicant right now? The floor for public comment. Is there anybody here who'd like to speak on this? I'll close the floor for public comment. Commissioners, any discussion on this? Okay. Well, hearing no discussion points, since we covered a lot with the applicant, if someone's willing to make a motion about this item.
I'd like to make a motion, please.
I'll second.
Is there, all in favor?
To
Yeah,
read the
you have to
motion
read the-
first.
I thought I had some time.
Chairman, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, application, 3 pages, Exhibit B, site plans, Exhibit C, wall dimensions, 2 pages, received June 16, 2025, Exhibit D, engineering report, 18 pages, Exhibit E, certified arborist report, 3 pages, received June 27th, 2025, Exhibit F, stone sample images, 3 pages, Exhibit G, and the commissioner's actual inspection and review of the subject property by all. I move that this commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. 1, that the application is for the replacement of an existing stone retaining wall in the front yard, reinstallation of existing flagstone on top of the repaired wall, removal of 1 31.5-inch DBH red maple tree adjacent to east elevation. 1 2 3/4 or greater caliper red maple tree will be planted as closely as possible to the removed tree prior to the end of the fall 2025 planting season. All work will be in accordance with attached and approved drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals, as required by law, must be obtained before work begins. 2, that the standards for walls found on page 34, trees on page 22, Appendix B, Albemarle Park, planning list on pages 58 through 59, and Appendix D, Albemarle Park tree and planting inventory on page 62 of the Albemarle Park Historic District Landscape Design Standards and Guidelines adopted July 8th, 2015, were used to evaluate this request. Number 3, this application does meet the design standards for the following reason. A, repair and replacement of existing walls shall utilize the same materials and techniques and will maintain the same appearance as the original. As much existing stone material will be utilized as possible. B, tree being removed is in decline. Replacement tree will be of the same species as the removed and will be planted as closely as possible to the location of removed tree. 4, that the action and improvement proposed in the application before us for certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Albemarle Park Historic District.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion, sorry.
Based upon the foregoing findings and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued with the following conditions. Revised site plan showing location of tree will be submitted for staff review and approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you all for coming in.
Whoa. I'm extra loud. Still have to crouch down like a weird person to get close. Okay, this application is for 97 Starnes Avenue in Montford. The applicant is the city of Asheville. This is Hummingbird Park, as I'm sure most or all of you know. This is for after-the-fact request to replace a section of fencing. If you're familiar with the west side of the park along the sidewalk, there was a wall there that drops off kind of steeply into the park. A lot of trees have been removed in the past like 5 years or so by Duke Power along that stretch. The chain link that was in there was kind of mangled and falling down. So our Parks Department was doing their best to maintain the park and installed a chain link fence, replacing the previous fence. So we need to get that resolved today. And so they are now going to replace the chain link fence with a new metal fence. You see on the right-hand side is the spec for the new fence. And I do not have any concerns about this fencing. It's needed for safety reasons, and they are going to replace the chain link with a more appropriate fence type. So that's all I have for you. Happy to answer questions if you all have any. Al Kopp from our Parks Department is here. I don't think Al, you didn't stand up to get sworn in, so if you need Al to comment to you, then he'll need to be sworn in.
Keep an eye on him.
He's a troublemaker.
Any questions for staff? Is the placement of the fence, because it's a little closer to the sidewalk than maybe the other one? And I
Yes.
know it's a rotten wall that the other one was on, but is that going to be in the way of any repairs to the wall in the future?
I mean, that's a good question. I don't know that we have any plans to improve that wall, given that there's a fence there. Sort of an interesting wall. I think it's sort of like one of the, it's been a while since I've looked at this, but it's almost like the one that's farther down on Cumberland that was an old foundation wall that almost looks like it's buttressed. This one sort of looks like that too. But it seems like that the top of the wall, where it's closer to the sidewalk, it would be probably tricky to repair there, but we could cross that bridge, I think, if we needed to in the future. This mic thing is really annoying. I'm sorry. I feel like I'm just going to pull up a chair. Too tall for this.
Okay, so I think are there any questions for Alex?
Question for me.
I've owned one of those fences before, and those top spindles break off pretty consistently.
They do.
Tree limbs, people trying to climb them.
Okay, that's helpful to know. We have had the flat rail metal fencing come through to the commission, and the commission required it to be pickets that protrude above the top rail, because that would be more consistent with like an actual historic steel fence. But your point is taken, so noted. I know that the aluminum fencing that they make today is not very durable.
This one is spec'd as steel.
Oh, it is? Sorry. Too many projects this time around. I didn't remember the material. So hopefully that means it will be more durable from in terms of the pickets.
All right, any other?
I have one question. In this site plan, it says proposed fence location 100 feet length, and it stops sort of arbitrarily. Is that where there's no more retaining wall?
I believe so. That's where it stops now in reality. It's like the grade changes kind of, it slopes up into that corner, I guess that's the northwest corner of the lot, where it's more gradual in its slope versus kind of dropping off. So I think it does just stop where it's pretty much, I'm sure this is not to scale, but.
It just looks like it stops arbitrarily, and I don't know if that's
It might just be that it's like not, like if it's not drawn to scale, it might just be that it's actually, I'm assuming that they've measured the fencing since they had to spec it out. So it just may not be drawn to to
line.
reflect the, the actual length. I think it does go a little bit farther back towards that northwest corner of the property. But I would say referring to the 100 feet is probably more accurate than we can ask the applicant to clarify on the plan if we need to.
Any other questions for staff?
Does anybody know when the chain link fence was put in?
I don't, at least. Al might know. Sorry, hang on. Let's get Al sworn in.
Now
so
we
he
got to
can-
swear him in.
Okay.
Now he's talking. Thank you, staff. Now we're going to hear from the applicant. And if you could raise your right hand real quick. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present to this hearing for a certificate of appropriateness or preliminary subdivision approval before the Historic Resource Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Introduce yourself. That's all right. We'll scooch up a little to make sure we catch you on that hot mic.
Do the same as Alex, yeah, bend over. Yeah, and to your question, that is actually the length of the retaining wall. It's truncated, so it doesn't go very far, and then the slope becomes really gentle. So it really would be 100 feet about is where it's indicated right now.
And Commissioner Humphrey's question about the age of the previous?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been here for some years, and it's been there at least 40 years now. So, and then that was prior to the staff, with the best of intentions, bringing the black vinyl coating in when that other one was degraded. And that was about a year ago or so. They came in with the black vinyl coated one to replace the old chain link one, just for health, for safety. And they thought that was appropriate at the time for the historic district, and that we are correcting that right now.
All right, other questions for the applicant? Okay, questions are good.
Yeah.
I live in the neighborhood, I see this corner all the time, and I'm saddened by how many trees have been taken out along that fence line and on the property at the edges, and I wonder if, along with the fencing, you're going to add any trees back?
There are no plans to do it, and especially on the side where the trees have been coming down. Yeah, in the vicinity of the retaining wall, we had no plans to.
I would request that just as a citizen.
Oh, I know. I've seen, and some have declined on the east side too, I've noticed. Where there was almost a little bit of a grove of trees there, and I've noticed those.
Along the fence line, we're all
Yeah, they were,
Alex said,
they
yeah.
were Duke Energy, they're in their power line easement land, you know how fun that is. But they were required to plant other trees in the park. In Montford, we just don't require them to be in the exact location from where they were removed. So there are newer trees in the park that were planted, but they're, to your point, they're not like kind of how that border was along the sidewalk, unfortunately.
Removing the trees from the wall was a good call. The ones that were growing out, that was a little bit of sunshine with the clouds on that. Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very
Great.
much.
Appreciate it.
I'm going to open the floor to public comment. Anybody want to talk about a wall in Montfort? A little fence? Then I'm going to close the floor for public comment. Commissioners, any internal, any talk on this? You're curious why it doesn't have to be chain link? Have to be? Chain link's an option for fences in the neighborhood, right? Didn't have to.
I know it's discouraged.
Yeah, you'll have to speak into that.
You can't do that.
We all have to, hear what you say.
All right. Any other, or a motion?
Wait, can I
for-
just clarify really quickly to your question, Leslie? Chain link fencing is discouraged but allowed provided it's dark in color, set back 5 feet from the property line and screened with vegetation. There's no option to screen this with vegetation. It is also not permitted in a yard that faces a public alley or street.
We're replacing what shouldn't have been there, because it's on the,
Yeah, this is an after-the-fact change. Put up after the storm-ish to keep little children from falling 20 feet. And big children. Is there a motion?
Like to make a motion?
Got to read the motion.
Oh,
I'm so sorry, I got so excited. Okay.
Chairman, based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, application, 4 pages, Exhibit B, site plan, Exhibit C, fencing specifications, Exhibit D, photograph, Exhibit E, Google Street View image added by staff July 8th, 2025, Exhibit F, and the commissioner's actual inspection and review of the subject property by all, I move that the commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. 1, that the application is for an after-the-fact approval to replace a deteriorated section of chain link fencing along the western property boundary. Newly installed chain link fencing will be replaced with new 100-foot-long section of 4-foot-tall black steel picket fencing. All work will be completed in accordance with approved and attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals as required by law must be obtained before any work may commence. 2, that the standard for fences and walls found on pages 36, 37 of the Montford Historic District Design Review Standards adopted April 14, 2010, and amended December 11, 2019 were used to evaluate this request. 3, the application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. A, new fence will be metal and will be sited on a location that is compatible with the traditional historic relationship of fences and walls to historic properties in the district. 4, that the action and improvements proposed in the application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montford Historic District.
Is there a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Based upon the foregoing findings for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kopp.
We're going to continue on our fencing journey. This is for 45 Pearson Drive, across the street from where we were last hearing. This application is also for after-the-fact approval to replace a fence. If you saw in your packet, there was an existing wood privacy fence in the rear yard when the current owners purchased the house, and they decided to replace that fencing with post and wire fencing, where now we're struggling again with this top and bottom rail issue. I don't have a photographic memory or anywhere close, but I seem to recall that when we were looking at the design standard amendments in 2016, we were contemplating fences in front yards for the most part when we were talking about these amendments to not allow top and bottom rails on post and wire fencing versus rear yards, where mostly, like probably 95% of the applications we see for rear yards are for fully opaque 6-foot privacy fencing. So it does seem really silly that top and bottom rails on a post and wire fence in a backyard would be an issue, given that if you're allowed to have an entirely opaque fence, it does seem silly. So something that we need to look at when we are revisiting the design standards here in the near future for fencing. So I I'm challenged by this because for the reason I just explained. So I've noted that in my staff report, and that's all I really have for you. I don't have any other comments, just that I noted that that's what the standards say, but also where the fence is located, different than a front yard. So.
So your feeling is that because rear fences can be up to 100%, guideline 10 can be 100% solid, this is a better alternative to that for the rear yard?
I mean, I still am struggling a little bit with part of the reason why we made that change was so that we were kind of meeting the spirit or the design style of the old school finer gauge wire fencing that I was describing at the last meeting, because this style is definitely more contemporary in appearance with the top and bottom rail than that older fencing that has just more of a lighter, more agricultural kind of landscape feel to it. So I'm kind of struggling though, because it's in a rear yard, where part of the change was also about, obviously the National Register nomination, and thus the standards describe the landscape in Montford as having a visual openness to it. And so that's part of the reason why fences have always been such a sticky wicket in this neighborhood, because it does change the character over time to have fences, especially in front yards where you're kind of changing the character of the landscape in a way that's more visible to everyone. So I'm kind of struggling with this one, honestly. I'm ready to get to the place where we can amend standards for fencing. I feel like they need some work, so.
I want to talk about this some more.
But I mean, obviously, we're not amending them today, so I probably should have worded that differently.
The fence terminates before the house and all that, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the siding, this is a fence that we would normally review at staff level because it's fully in a side and rear yard. The only reason why it's coming to you all is because of the issue with the top and bottom rail.
Any other questions for staff? Ready? Like to hear from the applicant. Introduce yourself. You're sworn in, I bet.
Hi, my name is Debbie Southern, and I own the house at 45 Pearson that you're looking at. Yeah, when we bought this house in 2017, as Alex said, there was a privacy fence up, and as the pandemic hit, we walked around Montford forever because that's all you could do is walk and keep away from people. And we saw a bunch of different style fences, and we both grew up with open backyards, running into people's backyards. And so we wanted, we had a golden retriever at the time that passed this year, but we wanted to replace the fence. It was rotting in a lot of parts, like the door wasn't closing. And so we wanted to replace the fence, and we went with what we felt was a beautiful fence that we could see our neighbors. We've met all our neighbors now, even handed bread over the fence at Christmas. And it is a backyard fence. You hardly see it from the road. I didn't apply for a certificate because I thought, well, I was replacing and repairing a fence that was already there. We didn't take anything down. It went exactly in the same spots that the other fence was. So our house is not historic. It was built in 1997. And we know we're in the historic district, but we felt it's a bungalow-style house, and we felt the fence sort of really went with the style of the house that we have. We enjoy watching the rabbits run through the fence, from yard to yard. And of course, we had a bear in our neighbor's yard this morning, and he didn't
Beer in your neighbor's yard?
A bear.
Okay.
Yeah, he didn't come over our fence, but, if he wanted to, he would be safe. And we have grandkids that like to climb on the fence sometimes, and, so that's okay too, because they're really little. They don't hurt the fence. We don't feel that the fence distracts from the historic character of Montford. And it is transparent, it's neighborly, it's more open. And I was just wanting to say about the guidelines on number 6 for fences in Montford. I do feel it's a little ambiguous, and it could have a lot more clarification. The first sentence we have abided by because it's a visible landscape. The second sentence, cross and horizontal members. I looked up what a member was, and, it's, I know what it's saying in a way, but it's not saying top and bottom rails. Where is the horizontal member in the fence or the cross one? So I feel like that it's a little unclear. It's not exactly, it can make you think of a couple different options with fences. So it doesn't state in there that you cannot have a top and bottom rail of a fence. So I just wanted to point that out because I just feel like Alex said, hopefully these guidelines will be reviewed soon and get back in front of, y'all, I guess y'all or a committee. And maybe be more clear exactly. I don't know if all the pictures are on here, but we walk the neighborhood and we've got, are they on here? 14 or to 17 pictures of fences just like ours with the addresses, because Alex said they must have the address, of the exact same backyard fence that we have. And some of them you almost have to go on, not the street they live on, but the other street to see the fence, sort of like ours, because it's not that visible from the road.
Okay.
And of course, these fences are expensive. There's no doubt about that. And to take, the top and bottom rail down would be expensive. And I can't imagine what it would really look like if that was the case. I just think consistency is important. I know we were drawn out. We built this in 2020, and because of the case that came last month across the street from us, they used us as an example. It's 2025 now. So we've had this fence for, a long time. No one's even hardly noticed it. But, I just think consistency is important throughout our neighborhood. Historic place we live, what we love about it is the differences. There's no house that really looks alike in Montford, and not every house is historic in Montford. And I don't think the fence, our backyard fence, distracts from the historic beauty of Montford.
Is there any questions for the applicant?
There are other pictures if you want to see. I don't know, do y'all get?
We get those,
Okay.
yeah.
Good. Okay.
Questions for the applicant?
Yeah, they're in there. I just didn't
Yeah.
put them in my slide deck, so if you want me to pull any up while we're talking, we can pull them up for sure.
Well, if they have them and
We've
they've seen them, I don't.
Questions for the applicant, so I think we're okay for a minute. We're going to open the floor to public comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor for public comment. Is there anybody here to speak? Oh, come on up, introduce yourself.
Tell me if I need to talk louder.
Talk louder.
Louder. I brought some supporting...
Introduce yourself first.
Susan Egerton, and I live on Pearson Drive
Okay.
as well. So I brought some supporting pictures. I'll just pass these out. Sacrifice mine, but I just wanted to thank Alex. I feel the same way about the conflict regarding fences in our neighborhood, and we had asked to have the guidelines revised about
Standards.
3 years ago. We started with our request. We surveyed the community, and over 80% of the people that responded wanted to revise the guidelines for fences. So it's quite a controversial issue. in our neighborhood. But to speak to the value of wire, value may not be the right word, wire versus the top rail and the bottom rail, I think if you look at the first picture across the bottom, you can see the failure of the wire fences across the top. You don't have that problem. Whether you like the fence or not, it does weather over time better. The first fence at the top is pretty old. I can't remember exactly. Do you know if Rhett put that in or if it was already there? So what, 20, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Been there a good while.
Oh, yeah, between.
Which one are we, what are we talking about? The fence?
The fence at the top
Is
that
this
has
case fence?
No, that's 20 Watauga.
another example of a
Okay.
backyard fence with a rail at the top.
Okay, gotcha.
And that's probably, my guess is 15 years old, and it's still in very good shape. Whereas you see the wire ones, I don't know how old they are, but some of the wire ones definitely fail. The one next to it at the top is a backyard fence with a top rail, and that can't be more than 5 years, I'd say 3 years ago.
Ms. Egerton, let's save that for when we're talking about redoing the standards. And I understand that that's an important part, but is there something about this application that you can lend some?
Well, it just seems to me like if this one was approved 3 years ago, why would theirs not be approved? So enough
It didn't
said.
come before us.
Okay.
That's why.
Okay, so second argument in their favor that I'd like to make is, I think if you look at these two pictures,
I see what you're doing. That's a good comparison.
this one, in my opinion, looks way more historic. You don't see this fence. I had to walk into their yard, even with their house, to take the picture. So you don't see their fence. You actually see it more from Montford Avenue.
Is that the applicant?
I'm sorry?
Is that the applicant's property?
Yes.
Okay.
And quite frankly, when I'm walking and I look through, to me, it's just way more historic than this, which is allowed, but is this historic? You know, that's my question. So I just would hope that you would consider strongly letting them keep the fence. It's quite lovely. Hardly shows from the street. I took Leslie by there, and she goes, "Where's the fence?" You know, you really have to look for it. And number two, if you can't find it in your brain to vote for it, I would hope you'd kick it down the road and let us get some revisions to the guidelines.
Any questions for Ms. Egerton? All right, thanks a bunch.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Anybody else here to speak? All right, then I'm going to close the floor to public comment. And commissioners, thoughts about the fence at 45 Pearson Drive in the backyard?
Thoughts, it's an after-the-fact application, and it's for the backyard fence. So I think it has less stringent adherence. To me, it's not like having it in the front yard. I would have a different opinion if it were the front yard.
Really hard to hear you.
Sorry. I appreciate that it's a backyard fence and it's a after-the-fact application. I don't have a problem with the top rail on the backyard.
So more of item 10, where rear fences could have been 100% solid. This is an
Right,
improvement on.
what Alex was saying, yes.
Yeah. All right, anyone else talk about this?
I agree. I think this is an improvement over what was there. It's more in line with the spirit of the standards. And I've spoken about in favor of this rule change before. The picture of the ugly popsicle stick fence is actually mine, which I would have preferred this, but you know, at the time, that option had been, I understood, had been eliminated. So, I think we should not let, well, something that improves what was there before and is, consistent with what the guidelines are trying to achieve, I think we should let them keep this.
Then maybe you're ready to make a motion.
I would move that we approve this application. I would move that.
Yeah,
I'll
to
second
open up the thing and make the motion.
Oh, no.
There's a process.
Step in.
You know where we're talking about?
I just want to say, I appreciate all the points that you guys brought up, and I know that you are patiently waiting for us to get to changing the guidelines, and that's our intention to move forward to do that. The storm kind of waylaid us in a lot of ways. And for us, we have to weigh what's in the guidelines that is our responsibility versus what people are asking for. So it's the reason why some of the guidelines aren't as clear is because we have to be able to decide property by property what's okay. But we appreciate you coming and sharing, and appreciate your patience, Susan, because I know this was a few years ago, but we'll get there.
Right, I just want to say really quickly, Susan, that since you're here, the executive committee is meeting next week. So we're about to pick back up on talking about the standards. So we will follow up with you all accordingly.
All right. Is there a motion?
Chairman, I would like to make a motion based on the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, the application, 2 pages, Exhibit B, the project description, 2 pages, Exhibit C, the site plan, 2 pages, received June 23rd, 2025, Exhibit D, the subject property photographs, 2 pages, Exhibit E, the neighboring fence photographs, 17 pages, Exhibit F, subject property previous fencing photos, 3 pages.
Commissioner Mays, sorry, make sure to add the 3 additional photos that, or there were
Sets of photographs, yeah.
3 pages of photos that were submitted today.
Exhibit G and the 3 pages of photos presented at the meeting by the witness. And the commission's actual inspection and review of the subject property by all members except none. I move that this commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. 1, that the application for after-the-fact approval to replace a 6-foot-tall vertical wood picket privacy fence in rear and side yards with a 4 to 4.5-foot-tall wood post and wired fence in the same location. All work will be completed in accordance with approved and attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals as required by law must be obtained before work may commence. That the standards for fences and walls founded on pages 36 through 37 of the Montford Historic District Design Review Guidelines adopted April 14th, 2010, and amended December 11th, 2019, were used to evaluate this request. This application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. The fence is sited in a location that's compatible with the traditional historic relationship of fences and walls to historic properties in the district. The fence is constructed of wood posts and wire. Although the fence has top and bottom rails, it's located in the side and rear yards where fencing may be 100% solid. The fencing is set back at least 1 foot behind the front building facade. The action improvements proposed in the application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montford Historic District.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Based on the foregoing findings and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Thank you very much.
Okey-doke, moving on. 264 Cumberland Avenue. I'm going to be somewhat short with this one. This application is for construction of a new accessory structure. This application was actually approved in 2022. The structure just hasn't built yet and their CA expired. So they're just back here to get basically a renewed CA, but it was approved as it was with the plans that were submitted to you this time around, so there won't be any differing outcome than what was already approved. I know last time it came through, we did talk a little bit about the location of the structure, just to give you all some context. The structure, really the only place that makes sense to put it is where it's proposed at the end of the driveway. You can really get around the house feasibly and like take up the whole backyard basically with a driveway, parking, et cetera, to put it on the, farther back on the lot. So, so that's why you see it kind of tucked into that corner where it's pretty tight. So in our Unified Development Ordinance, there is a provision for flexible development standards to allow accessory structures, specifically in historic districts, to be located closer to a property line than would be ordinarily. So like the setback requirement in the zoning district is 6 feet for accessory structures, but they're allowed to encroach up to 3 feet into the setback. In part where it's more appropriate to locate the structure there in accordance with the design standards. And so that's what was found at in the previous approval. So that's why it's 3 feet from the property line. They also, because of building safety, it had to be, the distance that it is from the primary structure. So it made that space a little bit tight for them. So they had to squeeze it back closer to the property line. The only difference from the previous approval is that there was a tree that needed to be removed to construct the structure. It's already been removed, so that's already done. They're also going to be removing and repaving that section of driveway that's back beyond the porte cochere. And that was discussed, if I recall correctly, somewhat in depth before, and it was agreed that they would use both exposed aggregate and a paver system, and the paver system would cover at least 75% of that area versus it being all exposed aggregate. So we didn't have the paver spec from the last approval, but they did submit. There's a Pine Hall brick paver spec in the packet this time around. So I'm not noting any concerns. I did ask for some additional manufacturer specifications, which we received, except for we do still need the window specifications as well as the roofing specifications. So other than that, no concerns noted on my part.
Questions for staff regarding this renewal of an application for a certificate of appropriateness?
Sorry, I didn't even go through all my slides, but elevations, and then the architect provided this rendering, which was really helpful. And I should note too that one of the changes that happened during the last review is that the structure got rotated so that it appeared more similar in terms of the garage doors facing forward. I don't think we have a rendering. We don't have a rendering today of how it appeared before, but it looked less consistent with the existing structures when it was turned.
For Alex?
Say again what the driveway is.
They're just repaving the portion beyond the porte cochere and between where that area, where it's already paved, they're just repaving it, that area between there and the accessory structure, where the accessory structure will be. It's been a while since I've walked back there, and they did submit some photos. Let me pull those up, sorry. Didn't even have time to look at these photos before the meeting today, so let's see if these help us. Yeah, so it's kind of just a informal parking area right now. So, but that where the car is where the accessory structure will go.
Bronco, that's not a car.
Excusez-moi.
Any other questions for Alex?
The rear setback, oh gosh, I might have to pull up. I think it's 3 feet on both sides, but let me pull up the.
That's the revised UDO number is 3 feet is the?
Yes, accessory structures in historic districts are allowed to encroach up to 3 feet into the 6-foot side and rear setbacks.
3 feet on each side, on the left and back. That's city UDO versus
Yeah, the design standards just talk more generally about placing, citing a accessory structure in a location that's like basically consistent with how other accessory structures are cited in the district. And then our UDO gives exception to new accessory structures that they can be located up to 3 feet into the setback. Normally, it would be 6 feet if you're not an accessory structure and you're in this type of residential zoning district. Does that make sense? Yeah, and it's just that on that corner where it's tucked up closer. So from the rear property line, you see the 15-foot, that boundary within the property boundary is the 15-foot setback, and it encroaches into that a little bit. And then on the side, you can see that it encroaches a tiny bit. Just where that, it's weird that this lot indents the way that it does on that back corner. So that's really where it's closer to the property line versus on the, the rest of the back and the side of it, so. Correct.
We can ask the applicant about that when they come up too. But they haven't submitted that.
And just to be clear, so that's allowed in the historic district because that's the historic pattern. Often didn't have as broad a setback as we now require. So that's why it's allowed.
Yeah, a lot of historic accessory structures are like pretty much right on a property line because we didn't have setback standards way back then, so.
Or in their neighbor's property.
Yes.
All right, anything else for Alex? Yeah, I got one of those. Okay, good.
Okay, thank you.
We'll call the applicant up. Are y'all sworn in? None either? Oh, boy. That's better, both of you. Anybody else going to talk who's not sworn in? Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the information you present during the hearing of certificate of appropriateness or preliminary subdivision approval before the Historic Resources Commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Come on up, introduce yourselves, and tell us about what's going on.
We're the owners.
Stay close to the mic.
Yeah, stay close to the mic, sorry,
You got to
guys.
hunch over it, but
Yeah, we're the owners. We actually created a timeline also, just so everybody could know how we got to this point, because we did, as Alex mentioned, we got approval.
that's what was in our packet, right? Okay.
Start the work. So the pictures that we're showing there, original approval, because we actually took the tree down and did some rough grading to prepare for the garage, and then we stopped work for a period of time.
The renewal of what y'all have already been approved on, let me just ask some of the commissioners if they have a question for you, because you don't have to go through the whole project, I don't
Great,
think.
perfect.
I don't have any questions.
I have one
Go
question
ahead.
when you let me ask.
Now's the time.
I notice on the drawings, that one that's actually up, a neighbor has some structure right within a few feet. I wonder, what's that structure? Does your neighbor know about this plan?
Neighbor came to the previous, when this came through, I recall.
Actually, the neighbor to the south, so the neighbor that we're 11 feet from, yeah, where the line of trees on the right, that neighbor came. And the neighbor that has the structure that's in that little corner, they did not come. That structure is a garage. Well, it's a garage structure that's actually being lived in by someone. So they rent it out, I guess. But it looks like an old single-story. And it's a chain link fence on that side. They don't have any screening. Unless that been created a long time ago. So we didn't provide any screening as a result.
But to answer the question, that neighbor hasn't really been involved in this, and nor, but they got the letters.
They haven't come here, not to my
And,
knowledge, yeah.
I would say that that neighbor did reach out to me just for clarification on the setback specifically, and I just explained it to her, and she said, okay, and so.
Allowed. I just wondered if that person knew what was happening. I have a friend whose neighbor had the lot next to him, and they built a house, and he didn't know that it was 10 feet from his kitchen window until it was out. But it's also not their primary residence.
Any other questions for the applicants? We're pretty okay on this for now. We might call you back if it all goes south, but right now it's okay. And thank you. I'm going to open the floor for public comment. Is anybody? I'm going to close the floor for public comment. Commissioners, some conversation on this? Vice Chair says no.
Some are
Then
low.
maybe we can entertain a motion for the
Okay.
265 Cumberland Avenues.
I would like to propose a motion. Based upon the evidence presented to this commission, including Exhibit A, application, 4 pages, Exhibit B, project timeline, and previous CA approval letter, 2 pages, Exhibit C, existing and proposed site plans, 2 pages, Exhibit D, new construction worksheet, 4 pages, Exhibit E, floor plans and elevation drawings, 8 pages, Exhibit F, material specification documents, 68 pages, received the 27th of June, 2025. Exhibit G, previous accessory structure CA, 2 pages, Exhibit H, mechanical unit specifications, 8 pages, received July 8th, 2025. Exhibit I, photographs, 2 pages, received July 8th, 2025. Exhibit J, mechanical unit location drawing, received July 9th, 2025. Exhibit K, additional photographs, 3 pages, received July 9th, 2025. Exhibit L, and the Commission's actual inspection and review of subject property by all members. I move that the Commission approve the C certificate of appropriateness based on the following. 1, that the application to construct a new 1.5-story, 978 square foot accessory structure in rear yard. Structure will have a stucco foundation, wood German lap siding with 10-inch reveal matching primary structure, Allura smooth fiber cement shake siding with 7-inch reveal, an asphalt shingle roof in to be determined color with front and rear facing shed dormers and decorative brackets matching primary structure. Windows will be TBD SDL 6/1 double hung and 6 light casements and to be determined color. Pedestrian doors will be Reeb half-light fiberglass, and garage doors will be Cloplay Canyon Ridge faux wood paneled with multi-light transoms. Structure will have a wood landing on east elevation with wood railing with 2-inch by 2-inch pickets, space 4 inches on center. Foundation plantings from the Montford recommended species list will be planted. Apply UDO Chapter 7:11:7 to allow placement of accessory structure 3 feet from property line. Remove existing deteriorated concrete driveway and install new exposed aggregate and pervious paver driveway in same footprint. Construct new area of exposed aggregate parking area. Adjacent to south elevation of primary structure, parking area will be screened with plantings from the Montford recommended species list. If archaeological resources are discovered during site work will cease until city staff has been notified and have inspected the site. All work will be in accordance with attached drawings and plans. All permits, variances, or approvals as required by law must be obtained before work may commence. 2, that the standards for the carriage house, garages, and accessory structures found on pages 34 to 35, walkways, driveways, and off-street parkings on page 50 to 51, landscaping and trees on pages 40 to 41, lighting on pages 42, 43, utilities and mechanical systems on pages 82, 83, and archaeology on pages 32 to 33 of the Montford Historic District Design Review Standards, adopted on April 14th, 2010, and amended December 9th, 2019, and the standards for flexible development found in UDO Chapter 7:11:7 were used to evaluate this request. 3, this application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. A, design a proposed accessory structure is compatible with the main house and will be located in the same location as the original. B, new accessory structure is not taller than 1.5 stories and is not more than 30% of the scale of the main house. C, proportion of the new structure is compatible with the proportion of the primary structure in terms of height, footprint, and massing. D, location of new accessory structure is in keeping with historic pattern in terms of relationship to primary structures, traditional location of ancillary buildings, orientation setbacks, retention of green space, and spacing between structures. E, new accessory structure will have a traditional roof form, materials, and details compatible with the main building or other historic structures of the district. F, protective fencing will be installed around critical root zones of existing mature trees. 4, that the action and improvements proposed in the application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montford Historic District.
Second.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Based upon the foregoing findings, for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued with the following conditions. Window and roofing specifications will be submitted for staff review and approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much for coming in.
Right, our last public hearing item is 255, Cumberland Avenue. This application is for site work, so I'm gonna just describe to you what the different pieces are to this application. So on the right-hand side is the site plan, where the applicant kindly color-coded things, which was super helpful. So the first item is proposal to replace the front walkway that connects, it's obviously this kind of pie-shaped lot where the walkway comes out to the skinny part of the pie. So there's just another aerial image with some site plan elements shown on it, as well as the front elevation. These are some images of the front walkway. It is concrete material, and they want to propose, or they are proposing to replace it with a stone walkway. So naturally, I have noted that as one of my concerns in terms of change in material. I realize obviously that the walkway needs some repair or the concrete to be replaced, but it is intact.
So sorry to interrupt, that's just for the walkway, not the patio, just the walkway itself?
Just the walkway. I'll get to the patio. Nope, that's okay. You just beat me to it. It's on the next slide. So there's also one after the fact thing where, I'm sure this little first floor deck thing was not original to this house. It's on the back. But that was removed at some point previously or already, and they'd want to install a stone patio in the same location. So that's what's shown in the top right-hand photo is just an example image of what they want to use for the patio. And then there's also a wall on the left-hand side. You see in the photos, the wall runs along the eastern side of the property. If you went by there, I'm not sure when that wall was constructed. If you look at Google Street View, older images, the wall had been swallowed by nature, so you can't really tell what the wall material was. I'm assuming it was concrete since it was at some point repaired / replaced with what's there now, because that looks like newer concrete. But they want to replace the wall with a new stone wall. And the bottom left-hand photo is an example of a wall in the district that they would like to mimic. On the right-hand side of this slide deck, they would like to replace the existing driveway that comes off of Cumberland Circle. It's a pretty short little driveway that they want to replace. It's concrete now, and they want to replace with pavers. The bottom photo, from what I understood from the property owner when we met for the pre-app meeting, was that I believe when they were doing some wall repair in the vicinity of the driveway, that portion of brick underneath the driveway that's shown in the photo was exposed. And so they're assuming that there were some kind of brick paving underneath it at some point. So obviously we can't dig up the whole driveway and know what it was fully constructed of, but that's the evidence that they supplied to you all for that proposed change. And then I think the thing besides the change in material in the walkway, since it's intact and it's concrete, which is, we've said many times over past meetings, found all over Montford, would be the proposal to change the topography of the backyard. This is like if you're facing the driveways on the left-hand side of this photo. And so right now there's the little low retaining wall, and then there's a fence that's kind of set back from that. And they basically want to terrace that, like basically build a wall behind the existing wall and backfill it. And the standards don't, it's okay. It's okay. The standards, if you look in the landscape standards, they indicate that the topography of a site shouldn't be substantially altered. It's been a while since this topic came up. I would say that interestingly enough, when we were looking at, Drew and I dug through all the addresses for the fence application that we looked at today, that were the example images of fences in Montford, just to see which ones had been approved and which ones had not. And interestingly, Commissioner May's brother's fence was one of the example images in there. And so we unearthed the approval for that fence. And as part of that application, there was also a proposal to change the topography of their rear yard. And it was, like, I think that the commission at the time said that it was too expansive in terms of the area that he wanted to regrade. And so I feel like that's true for this. It's a pretty big area. It's like a 30 by 30, I think, if I recall from the plans. And so I don't think this is appropriate. So that's my 2 cents on that. And yeah, so I think that those are all the things. The walkway, and there's a little set of steps in the backyard that I didn't include in my slide deck, but they want to replace, there's like an existing set of brick steps in the rear yard that look like they're pretty bad shape, and they want to replace those with stone similar or matching to the patio. And so that was the only other piece that's not in my slide deck. Do you all have questions about?
Where is that guideline about? I know what you're talking about, but I can't put my finger on it about
It's
changes in elevation or grading.
Page 41, number 8. It says it is not appropriate to alter the topography of a site substantially through grading, filling, or excavating, including alteration of drainage features, except to correct drainage problems.
While that's being looked at, that wall, all right, let me go through there's the walkway. And so standards are replaced with like material. And is that patching what's there in the past, or is that?
You can replace a walkway. Okay. It just has to be in the same material, configuration, dimension, et cetera.
The curve is all going to be the same. Flagstone or patio makes sense to me. The wall that starts at the corner of the pie all the way beyond the parking pad to the end is all going to be changed to the more stone looking wall.
Yes, and the reason why I didn't emphasize that change as a concern is because the wall that's there is clearly newer concrete. Assuming that it replaced concrete, but it's not been in my time with the commission. So I don't know, or it could have been, and maybe we just didn't know that it was. I think that the person who owns this house now, owned it for very long, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
The parking pad is some sort of brick showing concrete covering it a little bit. It could be just an edge, or it could be all brick pavers in there. And so for the standard for that is driveways may be concrete or other materials. Strongly encourage that brick or concrete driveways.
I think it says that you all can approve. I think it says something about materials on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's just about if you feel like that is the evidence that was submitted is sufficient to.
But your feeling, or what we're seeing, is that's going from brick to concrete and now to pavers. Topography, the fence isn't part of that. The fence goes away.
Yeah, there would be a wall basically where the fence is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're looking at the, this slide hopefully is helpful to illustrate. Like either they would raise the height of the wall at the sidewalk, like on the bottom, in grade out to the top of that wall, or they would build a shorter wall behind it and grade from there to the top of the shorter wall. The shorter wall would be basically in the same location as the fence is.
Any other questions for staff?
Those advertised as like permeable pavers or just?
Yeah,
Say
sorry, it's probably hard to see in I just clipped the image and made it really small, but they're basically like the same permeable pavers we've seen here recently.
Seem actually permeable or?
No.
Okay.
I don't think they're permeable, but I mean, they're probably more permeable than just straight up paving with concrete, but.
Okay.
Permeable than sheet metal. Okay, any other questions for staff?
Thank you.
Applicant come up and tell us what's going on. Great.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time today. I am William Laity. I'm a North Carolina licensed landscape contractor, and I'm the owner for 38 years of my business, Integrated Landscape of Asheville. Mr. Shane Smith could not be here today.
All right. Just kind of walk us through. Let's start with that walkway in the front. You might want to slide it one slide so we can see the arrows just go down a couple times. Yeah.
And unfortunately, Mr. Smith, I gave him quite a lot of material, and he chose a few pictures out of that. So there are other pictures that that wouldn't actually be the style. The other picture of the patio that you saw, the blue-gray crab orchard, that would be more the type.
A little less contrast than this is what you're saying.
Yes, and in fact, to keep this to facts, that flagstone does exist on the property. There's a walkway. If you were to look at the Zillow picture for this property, you would see, I didn't know what I was going to need or how to do this. There is on the Zillow, there is already a walkway, an axillary walkway to that is blue-gray crab orchard, which is
But this one was concrete before.
This one was
Yeah.
concrete before, that's correct.
So the standards kind of push us to seeing that as repairing or replacing with like to like.
May I ask, I stood in front of this committee May 10th, 2017, this is a long time ago. I think you were here, Alex. And they let me change something. Let me change something that was, a kind of a rundown old part deck and part pebble. It was ad hoc, and they let us.
Better condition than that?
This is in better condition than that was. That was more of an eyesore.
Started to
And in
break
fact, that wood deck structure that you pointed out, that really was an eyesore. I had nothing to do with removing it. They did remove it. Anyway, I have nothing to stand on other than it's our contention that the flagstone is in that neighborhood. It is on that property, and it is more attractive, even to the period, than the concrete. But that's,
Talk about that too some more.
Context.
Patio is that? I'm just kind of going through for me, and other commissioners are going to have questions.
It's
I'm
a
not
number of things, I know. It's a lot.
Yeah, but at least it doesn't have solar panels. We don't have to deal with that. Oh, that was last month or 2 months ago. So. All right. That wall. So that's so you're just going to match the wall across catty corner from you as much as you can?
So, again, he did not include all the pictures that I had. This is a wall that's on Soco Street, right around the corner, catty corner. I'm sorry, I didn't know that I was supposed to have addresses, so I don't have the address. That is a wall that's over on Soco Street. Do we have one of these? walls are walls we've built before that try really with a lot of integrity to match those old walls. We don't use one type of stone. We mix stones. Back in the 90s, there was a stone product all around that was called Buncombe County Fieldstone. That was very similar to the granite, schist, and gneiss stone that's all throughout Montford. That stone is almost impossible to get. So what we do now is we mix things like weathered-looking Hooper's Creek, which is a local stone. We mix it with a weathered-looking Tennessee fieldstone, and we have a little bit of old stone that we keep in our yard. We have a big landscaping yard. And we mix them together and try to do the best. The thing that they're passing around, those pictures, those are some other attempts to make a wall look old.
There may be some old stone at 70 Cherokee Road.
If anyone knows of any old stone, we really know how and appreciate mixing, peppering in old stone. We do it all the time, making a wall look old. There's a few pictures showing that, But this wall on Soco Street, that's sort of I can't say we'll get exactly that way, but we will mix colors of stones to get that feel. Old Buncombe County.
And you're not changing the height?
Now, on the original wall, we're not changing the height. And what that wall, by the way, is it's old cinder block CMU, and it's been stuccoed, and this is the angle of the post. I don't know if you can see from the picture. In places it's a little out, and in places it's completely leaning.
Height is going to be the same?
Height will be exactly the same.
Parking pad?
So the parking pad, he just doesn't like somebody came in there and put concrete over the old pavers.
Brick pavers is that what those
It
are?
would
or
not, we've not proposed brick, but he might, he basically said, find out what you all will approve. We were considering something like a Belgard paver, and we have used that. In fact, I hope my clients, the owners at the Applewood Manor, got permission because they just had us do Cumberland cobble, which is a type of...
Heard you.
Okay, well, I'm being honest. I'm telling the whole truth, nothing but the truth. We just did that around the corner, right next door, for those clients. We did Cumberland cobble, and it is conjecture that it seems in keeping with the more of the old cobblestone look from the day. This house was built in 1903. But again, that's your...
Yeah, the way I'm kind of looking at it is this is the third layer. We went from
brick to concrete.
Paver to concrete and now to...
Back to paver, but a different type. That would be the old bricks that were made in Asheville locally in the
Robbins paver.
Out quite a few of those, and we've laid those pavers before. They're very hard to get anymore, the old ones.
Okay.
And would those pavers be, looks like the picture is more of a kind of a brown, or would they?
He didn't choose the picture. I mean, we're open. If you said we prefer this color or this look, Cumberland cobble is a type of Belgard paver. Actually, may I approach you?
Sure.
This picture right here,
Okay, yeah.
that's the one that we think wall rocks and different rocks that we see in that neighborhood. We're not talking about the terracing of the walls yet. doesn't, he doesn't want it he wants to bring it back to 1903 as much as possible. Probably wouldn't have been there.
The last one is that change in topography.
I stand before you I drove around and found 3 properties in a 1-block radius that have split terraces. And it's true, they already were there. I also noticed that more of the properties that have a grade change between the house and the road have leveled off. And again, I would have to, I guess, do a study, drive around, give you a bunch of addresses, but far more common, I think it's factual to say it is far more common when you're on Cumberland Avenue, Soco Street, Cumberland Circle, and Cullowhee, and some of the, and even going down over to Elizabeth Place, that wherever there's a grade change, it has over the years been changed to be a little more level. He is experiencing erosion there. Wants to have gardens. He wants to get rid of the fence, which we think is an improvement. It's a Lowe's, it's a Lowe's fence. He wants to remove the fence and have that little, and that wall would also only be 18 inches high. It is eroding, to be fair, it is eroding. I mean, he could work very hard and get a lawn growing there or something, and if he mulched very heavily, he could have plantings and not have it eroding. So he does, in fact, yes, want to change the grade. And here are, I mean, I don't know if this is of any use. Those split level walls. And in fact, these are much larger. In tandem, several of these walls make 6 or 7 feet. Ours would be the 22-inch wall, go back quite a ways, and then a little 18-inch wall. And the front visual of the wall would actually be considerably less height than the fence that he wants to take out. I wish I had pictures, just that it's kind of a slope like this. I'd say it's about a 9 to 12% slope. And we want to reduce it to a 6% slope by bringing that little wall up. So he just can't get anything to grow there right now. Of course, he hasn't had us in there yet to work on it. So the wall along the sidewalk, of course, is existing. That's a grade that we can't do away with because it's already there. That wall is falling over. The wall, if you look at the second cross section, that's really what we want to do. We just level that up a little bit. On the high end, it would go from 0 to 18 inches. So it's the second of those cross sections. He thought you might approve one tall wall in place of another wall that was already there. And I said, no, I don't think that's really a substantial grade change.
Alex, in the past, on a grade change, has there been a stone, or is there another solution besides a linear physical wall and grading and sculpting it back? Or has there been a similar example like this? Okay. Yeah,
That
I know.
doesn't mean you have to make.
No, that helps. All right. Any other questions for the applicant?
That wall was 18 inches. I was thinking from the drawing it was 24. But now I'm having trouble finding the drawing. Here it is.
46, new 46-inch high stone wall.
Well, that's the
24 high.
alternate.
Sorry, I'm sorry, it is, I did say 24, and he and I talked about lowering it to 18, and this is an older version. So, if it were to not be approved at 24, but could be approved at 18, we would happily accept that. And you're right, I apologize. I'm a little unprepared because
You're doing great. You're doing great. Any more questions for the applicant? That are also brick and
steps would be basically a continuation of the patio. There would be a stone patio there. And then right now, there's a little old falling apart. I think it's part brick and part, I think you have a
Yeah, it's
picture
in
of it.
here.
And it's kind of falling apart, and he would just have me do the same flagstone,
Down from the patio or goes up from the patio?
Comes from the patio to that side yard, which is the slope. And then that yard flanks alongside of the driveway. And it's a really small little driveway. His address is Cumberland Avenue, but this is on Cumberland Circle.
But I was just asking the stair, you see it from Cumberland Circle because it's near the drive?
I don't really think you'd see it from either. It's up by the house. Behind that sort of alcove, so.
deck is opposite of it.
Yeah, I think it's on the other side. So basically that, what you're describing, William, is that little deck that's right there and the bump out are in front of where the steps are, so you wouldn't be able to see it from the street.
Quasi-obscure, yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much.
I need to keep your photos. Is that okay? Or do you need to make? It's okay. We don't, actually, you can take this copy back. We just have to scan these in as exhibits. So if you don't mind me keeping these. Yep. Yep. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this? Seeing none, I'll close the floor for public hearing. Commissioners, let's work through this, starting with the walkway. We're changing the material, or the applicant is proposing to change the material from concrete to stone, flagstone. Standards retain and preserve the location, configuration, and materials of intact character defining historic walkways. Newer replacement will be compatible with site. Our staff has a concern on that replacement, or is flagging that as a little concern. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I feel like since it was concrete and it's in the front of the house.
Now we can't hear you. Sorry.
Sorry. Because it's in the front of the house and is visible and it was concrete, I lean towards keeping it concrete. I feel a little more open towards the flagstone in the back or in the patio. Walkway.
Right, so that's more of standard one, and
Right.
from there to other commissioners? That microphone.
On those two issues, that is where I am.
What do you consider, or do you have experience with replacing concrete that's antique with a more antique-looking concrete?
Thank you.
In other words, rather than,
I am familiar with it. We don't actually pour concrete. There is a stamped concrete contractor whom we have worked with who does antiquing. We actually do commonly put antiquing colorant in our cement for our flagstone work.
mortar.
But with the mortar for pouring, that would be a stamped concrete person. In other words, if you say that it has to be concrete, he'll be hiring someone else. I shouldn't say that. He might talk me into it. But and yes, it can be done,
Aggregate,
and it's
yeah.
the stamped concrete people that know how to do that have all that expertise.
Aggregate so that it has the bumpiness that,
I'm not sure about that. The way stamped concrete looks, if you've seen it before, it comes out with a kind
It
of a
looks new.
glossy finish.
It
It's
looks
nice,
new,
it's
yeah.
handsome. I think the
Not
flagstone is
historic.
handsome, but it would be very different than what you have. So just pouring it in concrete would be probably the closest to what was there. And in
Placing
fact,
like for like.
that walkway that, there's no concrete walkway on Cumberland Avenue. Cumberland Circle has a fairly new, within the last 10 years, white concrete walk. So to be fair, it would match that. And it is concrete right now. It's just old, very old. But I don't have experience. I do have a lot of experience using antiquing colorants, but not for pouring concrete, because then it goes into the truck. It's different.
Other commissioners want to talk about that walkway, and we can kind of move down this list of 5.
I will restate my position on this one since we have some new members. The standard as it was presented is not, the description of the standard is not one that I personally agree with. I think that this standard number 1 actually leaves us a lot of leeway. Because it doesn't say, I should say it leaves owners a lot of leeway, because it doesn't say retain and preserve location in all circumstances. It says do it if the feature is intact, if it's character defining, and if it contributes to the overall historic character of the site. To me, and this is entirely subjective, but concrete is rarely, if ever, character defining. So when this issue has come up before, I thought that the guidelines allowed for changing from concrete to stone or some other material that was otherwise approvable. And I spoke to my own personal experience of getting a minor work approved to replace a concrete sidewalk at my home with one that is stone. So I don't have a problem with that. I did have a problem with the picture that showed the brown crab orchard. But if
All right,
it
you
were,
need to come back up to the mic if you're going to speak, sorry.
yeah. Okay. So with that change, I have no objection to the proposed change
Pathway.
to the sidewalk.
I just want to jump in and clarify for our new members, concrete is a character-defining material in Montford. That's not subjective. It is character-defining of Montford. It was historically found all over Montford. So I just.
I think the
clarify that.
disagreement is what the term character defining means. If you mean, did it exist historically, I agree with that.
That is what.
But character defining, to me, suggests something that is, unique and aesthetically pleasing, specific to the property.
That's not what historic preservation is about. It's about preserving the historic character, not what was aesthetically interesting
Right.
or great to people. It is about preserving all the things that were historically characteristic of whatever building, place, neighborhood we're talking about.
But as between two options, if either one of them are equally likely to have been used at the time, why does it matter what happens to exist at this period of time?
Because it's, the standards say retain and preserve. That is the very first thing on
Right.
every single page.
Yes.
And it is an existing historic intact walkway. And so there's no basis for the commission to just be like, I don't really care about concrete. I don't think it's great. Let's just change it wherever. And please also just imagine this. If every walkway in Montford were a different material than the zillions of concrete walkways in front yards that exist today, it would very much change the character of the neighborhood. So I just think, anyways, I am.
But since we're
obviously on
about
the very
three,
opposite.
I don't know what the split is now, but one is about as common as the other. Do the stone ones detract from the neighborhood? I don't personally think so. And no one knows how old that sidewalk is. No one.
It's highly unlikely that someone picked up a stone walkway and put in a concrete walkway, I would say. And secondly, it's not about whether or not one is more appropriate to the neighborhood or not. It's about retaining and preserving what was there. And concrete walkways are far more prevalent in Montford than in front yards than stone walkways. And so, anyways, I obviously feel very strongly about this. So I'm just going to stop there.
Of the site, and there is examples of the flagstone on the site. So where do you draw the line between the site has two different characteristics?
That walkway had to have been added later because it connects down and isn't like, most walkways in Montford go either straight out to the street or they go on a 90-degree angle turn to a driveway is pretty much the most typical configuration of a front yard walkway. There's that more less formal walkway that he's describing that comes kind of up into the yard from the sidewalk on the Cumberland Avenue side. So, but we'd have to look at our file, but I imagine that walkway was added later. Walkway versus. Yes. Yeah, that's what the standards say. They say retain and preserve the location, configuration, and materials of existing intact walkways and driveways, et cetera.
And the front steps of the building itself are concrete, it looks like in the picture.
There's a staircase, yes, that's concrete, that comes from it was poured not that long ago. There's a concrete staircase coming from the driveway up to that higher level front yard.
Sorry about that.
That's pretty recent.
All right.
Can I just point out, so on page 50, which begins the walkways, driveways, standards, that's where it says what were historic walkways in historic Montford, and it mentions concrete. It mentions others, but it mentions that. And to your argument, Mr. May, I mean, the standard of retaining and preserving existing is found throughout the standards. Now, this one, you don't seem to like concrete and walkways, but take your argument and say, all right, that house used to be sided with pebbled ash, and now they want to replace it with shingles. And I don't like pebbled ash. And so and there's shingles on the accessory dwelling. So what's wrong with just replacing it? So, I mean, this is,
Yeah.
it's an issue with, we've had this come up with roofs before, where people want metal roofs because they think they look historic and old, and they last sometimes longer, but it wouldn't have, and there are other metal roofs in other parts of Montfort or other houses, but you can't just pick and choose. So you're looking at that property, and if there's evidence. Now, I did think, I heard the applicant say something about, in one area, there was evidence that it had been something else before, but that might have been the driveway, and you're not there yet. But on this concrete.
Yeah. Well, I think some of this is just, take 6 people and have them read the same words and get 6 different interpretations. So, and that's your point is well taken. But I don't think, for one thing, deciding, our core focus is on these houses. So I don't think jumping from the sidewalk to a house, I mean,
Standards have to be applied.
If you will let me,
across,
if you'll let me finish, this particular standard says that it is a minor work to install a new walkway or driveway, or repair one, or to do a repair that introduces new materials. Well, it says it in the margin of the guidelines. If a sidewalk that's concrete can only be repaired with concrete, why would it say that it's a minor work to repair it with new materials? So, and then you've got these other standards down here that talk about, there's another place where it talks about repairs. Oh, it says, in the previous page, water pervious materials such as gravel, crushed stone, or pervious paving blocks, minimize runoff, blah, 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 and are strongly encouraged for new or deteriorating driveways. So if your driveway is deteriorating, I guess, enough, you can switch to some pervious material. Both of those things to me suggest that this is not meant to be as rigid as the way it's being applied. But that's...
Across the board. You don't change, it's just, you may not like it, but it's keeping with being preserving what was there.
But this isn't restoring a piece of art.
That's the overarching theme. You may not like it, but that is if they're going to come in here, they're not going to paint this pretty colors because this is the way it was.
But the guidelines are what the guidelines are. And that's what we're trying to work with.
You are
Yeah.
saying if you back up and think about it, like if it's a Monet painting and he used this color of blue, but you think you do what was there.
But we don't make people stick with the color of their house. We don't make them stick with the
I
material.
don't have guidelines about the color of the house.
I think that those aren't, I think Sue's point isn't about color. She's just using that as an example. But I would just go back to something that you said and make a very clear statement to the commission. State statute dictates that you oversee landscape features. We are not just concerned with the house. We are concerned with everything in the neighborhood. So that's just as important as the buildings to some degree. And so that's not an okay position to take. You should be looking at both. They are standards that apply to landscape for a reason, and I don't think you can just say, I think I care about the houses more. It's fine if you do, but you have to apply the standards just as evenly to landscape features as you would a house, is my point. So I just want to make sure that for our new commissioners that in the state statute, it is noted clearly that landscape features are something that you are within your purview to look for the walkway to be repaired or re-poured in the same configuration, location, width, et cetera, as existing. No.
Same as, yeah, correct.
It will age over time just like any other paving material.
Same as the wall is that he's putting outside along Cumberland Circle is going to. So that's, any other commissioners want to weigh in on walkway?
Obviously, for new commissioners, this has been a debate before, and we did have a long hearing. I think they had to come back, and it was all about this concrete. And all we can say is that you do have to base it on the standards. The standards aren't perfectly objective. There is some room, but overall, as I said, you start to, as you read the guidelines, you start to see what are the controlling principles, which are retain, preserve, use like with like. It's just in each standard. That's how standards get written. But there's always some room for interpretation, and so Mr. Mays was telling you this interpretation.
But just to help the
That's just so you
applicant,
know.
how y'all are feeling on this. We got 4 more to go. Walkway first.
I would just say that, like, it's important to say that, to go back to what you're saying, is that we've always brought change of material to the commission because it most oftentimes is subjective. Now, if somebody submitted a minor work for to replace a walkway that was concrete and they were like, same thing with the driveway, if they like dug up the side of it and were like, look, there's all this brick under here, I want to like restore the brick or repair it with brick, then we would be supportive of that. But we have to have some evidence that it was some other thing before.
Well, you didn't have any evidence when I did it in 2016, so.
But we'll go and look at the file and just see what was approved, because, I mean, I certainly don't remember 2016 at this point.
So I think there's a fairly consensus that the walkway may need to move to a concrete material or leave it as is. I'm kind of just moving along. I think this is the way to do it. If anybody has any suggestions, I'm open to it. The patio in the back that is existing of the fieldstone.
Yeah, that is something we would ordinarily approve as minor.
All right, so look, we crossed one off. The wall going from the Pie Point down Cumberland Circle for 100 feet or so. I love the idea of replacing that CMU block and concrete patch and lean with a more appropriate stone. Is there anyone who feels that that's going to be problematic for the neighborhood or for against the standards? Cross that off. What?
Will that be a stone wall or is it a stone?
Oh yeah, he passed the pictures around. He's.
I know what it looks like. I'm just asking, is it
Oh.
a stone wall or is it a veneer?
Are you? Excuse us. Could you approach for just a second? We have a question, and is that CMU block with a veneer, or is it solid stone
It's
to the dirt?
CMU block with stucco on it.
No, I think they're asking about method of construction for the new wall.
The new wall would be using, not building, would be using actual stone as the structure.
All stone?
not a veneer. Yeah.
All stone, okay. Thank you. Parking pad. So this is an example of walkways, driveways compatible with site, and the material. So this is a number 1 on the same page of retain and preserve material. So I see this as visually moving from what they discovered as brick pavers to concrete laid on top, and now we're headed another direction with decorative pavers, water pervious pavers. How do other commissioners feel or see the standards on this? Mr. Holt, what do you think on this? It's sort of similar in preserving, retain and preserve.
Talking the wall.
Well, it's the parking pad.
So, oh, yeah, I'm
So I could see this as remaining concrete. Because the concrete's not damaged at all, I don't
In favor of either leaving it concrete or maybe bringing it back to the brick.
exploring if there's enough of those brick pavers to.
That may not be possible, but.
I think it would also help us to unearth some of that to match what was there. If it is I don't know if any of you looked at the paver spec for 265 Cumberland for their driveway was a Pine Hall paver product that is basically like brick. Pine Hall is actually the product that we spec for the sidewalks in Biltmore Village. So it might give us a better sense of what the color was. It kind of looks like it, I'm wondering if maybe it matched the foundation wall that you guys were looking at, or in the interior photo.
Rick, and he might be very pleased to learn that that's a possibility. Pine Hall brick has those old bricks from the
Robbins
up to the 20s.
pavers.
They're almost impossible to find. We used to be able to buy them salvage. I bought a lot of them from when the Enka plant was torn down years ago, and there's very few. So we've been not in a historical preservation setting, but we've been using those Pine Hall. They're antiqued. They're fired a little differentially, so they have an antique.
I don't think that they're going to want to, or be able to justify tearing up enough driveway to see if it is all brick. Because then they'd have to either patch the concrete or.
Yeah, no, I just meant
Place.
at least having like a brick or two to be able to kind of understand what the color, the appearance was, because it looks like it maybe matched the foundation. Well, I think that was an interior photo, but they may have to source the brick though. I don't know what a lead time is for getting that much brick. No, of something like Pine Hall that would. Yeah, the rumbled.
Yeah, the rumble. And I'd be happy to send them to you.
Yeah, that's handsome. That's nice.
Something you can,
Let the other commissioners see it too.
Have it in the drive.
Sorry, I really wasn't.
We have it in the drive. It's Exhibit F.
So a replacement material that's more congruous with the character is there any discussion on that? Topography. Changing the incline from 24-ish inches. Grade. The 18 to 24-inch wall and infill. Landscape structures should be compatible with historic neighborhood and material and.
You're looking at 41.8.
Not appropriate to alter the topography and site of substantial. And so, okay, now I'm back on path. So that's where staff was saying they felt 6 feet was starting to become substantial in a previous mission. Any thoughts on this with the commissioners, starting from the other side this time? So. Didn't see anything specifically eroding. Oh, I see. There looked like there was a tree stump in the dip. But that's all I see is a little drainage. But are there going to be weep holes in the wall? Are there going to be weep holes in the walls? So that's going to, and then some French drain action behind it?
When we build that lower wall, we will put sweep.
I think he means the upper one, the new wall.
The upper one would also, we have a system where we put, we actually build a drainage. The wall is a drainage system. When we do the rock work, we put drainage tubes in and have a field of crushed stone completely behind the entire height and the entire length all the way around, and it's wrapped in geotextile fabric. So where once there was, and this is we guarantee this to every client, where once there was sediment laden or muddy water coming through there or coming down, there's now clear water.
And you said that although the drawing says that wall would be 24 inches, it would just be 18.
I'd be happy to change that to 18. He and I talked about that, and I'm sorry.
And the space is like 30 feet long?
It's 30 feet wide and 20 feet deep.
And of course, it's only 18 inches deep at the deepest part.
It's only 18 inches deep at the deepest end, yeah, that's correct.
There would still
Goes
be
from
some slope.
zero to 18. It would diminish the slope. He and I feel enough that with the drainage system behind the wall, it would stop, he would be able to garden there without it running off.
So along the wings of this
Wraps around.
tapers down
It tapers
into
down
flush.
to zero, down
Okay.
to zero, exactly.
That length is the length that looks like of the parking pad of the side.
Approximately, yes. Oh, yes, exactly, yes. That's very 12 or 14 feet.
Still hung up on this standard on altering the topography Yeah, but I want to hear what other commissioners say.
Drainage problem.
So I would say the main focus is on the term substantially. I mean, and I don't know what that means. We live in a town where people routinely take down mountains to build some new structure.
Not in a historic district.
And, thank you. And, you know, a lot of these lots, including mine, were built in ravines and became buildable because somebody brought in a huge amount of dirt. This is about the same height as like a garden retaining wall for an elevated garden, for a raised bed garden, 18 inches. So it's, you know, something like this tall, 30 feet long, which is about 10 more feet than this table. That's pretty minor to me. And I think my assumption would be that when this standard was written, that they were talking about, you know, don't fill in giant holes, don't, you know, really radically alter the topography, don't bring in a bulldozer. This is something that people could do with wheelbarrows and shovels. And I don't think that the guidelines would or should discourage that, but that's my.
Yeah, I just struggle with staff's longer view of what the size is of an impact versus what I agree with you is, you know, this is a weekend job, no offense, to fill that in and build a retaining wall. And I think what he's doing with French draining and is going to help with whatever drainage they have, even if it's just on that front wall, is going to accept water and move through.
Well, now, the only example, objective example that I heard often was my brother's project, which was 10 years ago. He has a 3/4 acre lot, and he wanted to install 2 or 3 terraces. One of the walls was going to be about 6 feet. And people on the commission at the time thought that was too tall. That's a 6-foot wall, which in the neighborhood is not that unusual. We have 6 feet retaining walls all over the place along the street. But, you know, that was the only objective example that I heard.
So I read the minutes for that today. It was 6 square feet is what they decided was too big of an area, not 6 feet tall wall. So
No, I know. I'm just saying that.
this is over 600 square feet. So I'm just to put it into context. And I mean, like I said before, it doesn't mean that this commission has to take the same stance as that back then. And to your point, it is very subjective, and the commission back then struggled with it. And so I get that. I just feel like if this were the only way to correct the drainage problem, that would be one thing, but it's not. I think it's more about usability of this part of the yard, and that's what we should just say that's what it is.
But it's a garden wall. Like, why do we care? Why do the guidelines care? Why about somebody's garden wall? Something that somebody could do with a rake in an afternoon.
But your neighbors create.
Underselling it a little bit also.
It's not like it came from on high.
Like, that's not a rake job. That he's going to bring in a mini X or somebody with like a large wheelbarrow. That's like a pretty substantial construction project. I appreciate your like hyperbole, certainly, but it is not appropriate to alter topography of a site substantially through grading, filling, or excavating, including alteration of drainage features. Has he tried any other ways to mitigate erosion? That, to me,
Yeah.
locks that one in.
Well, but you're assuming that this is quote unquote substantial. And maybe it is. That is an entirely subjective comment, or term, but in relation to the amount of work that people do, grading that happens for a new construction site, projects that people do on the weekends, this is just, are we going to say that people can't add a raised bed garden with a rock wall around it in the neighborhood without coming to HRC?
But we look to the standards first. The standard says it is not appropriate.
If you decide that a raised bed garden is substantial, then I agree. But
The second terrace. Yeah, you're talking about two vectors, too. You're talking about a driveway and a walkway that people interact with.
I don't think anyone buys in this neighborhood with the understanding that HRC will fly spec their weekend landscaping projects to this degree. But that's just my opinion, and I'm just one person.
There's plenty of raised garden beds. That's not the same as taking an existing knee wall that's right next to the sidewalk and creating a terrace there. So.
But we're not talking about that. We're talking about.
But you're talking about, you can't have a garden bed now. This is ridiculous.
Also,
Have a garden bed.
just because you say.
Let's just talk one at a time. Let's let Hans talk first.
Keep saying that it's not substantial. That is just a word you're saying. It's not a reality of the project. He can speak to the reality of the project and its square footage and the amount of tonnage of stone that you have to bring in. I bet that that's at least like, I don't know, a cubic yard, like a full pallet of stackable stone. Can you speak to the materials that would be needed for that second terrace wall? Take off for that stone?
Probably be about 3 or 4 tons.
Yeah, so I would say substantial, well over 4 figures in just materials. That's it.
But that's not what that says. I agree with what you said. Substantially, is that size? Is that cost of materials?
Cost is not in our, so it's not cost, we know that.
But I mean, 2 is.
Sorry.
Right? Is that
Could be weight.
6 degrees to 12 degrees slope? We don't know what substantial is. Doesn't mean that it's 600 feet or 100 feet or 6 feet. What is the barometer of substantial?
The way I am going to absorb substantial is by listening to staff who's overseen hundreds of these cases and has a view, whether it's perfectly what I agree with or not, but that's what has been seen historically in the neighborhood as approval, so that we are a consistent board that is predictable and understandable. That's what we should be, I feel, and that would
I
help.
agree with you.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
And that's what would help the neighbors that you're concerned about saying, whoa, we're going over this. This is substantial because it is a 7,000 pounds, we just said, of stone.
I agree with what you just said. But it's not like we started off the meeting with, well, here's the 12 things that we've been proposed before, and this is what was considered substantial and not allowed, and this is what was substantial and isn't. If we had that kind of data, I would totally agree. But we don't. I happen to look at this one meeting minute from this one meeting at another time, and the commissioners decided six, which is a lot different than the kind of record that you seem to be, that you were wishing for.
Staff carries that historically.
I didn't hear that statement, but maybe I misunderstood.
I thought that's what she was saying, was that commission felt that 6 feet was, or whatever it was pushing it a little.
And I'm just
And I
saying,
could say
that's just an anecdote from one particular meeting over the many years. And so it doesn't really tell us much of anything.
Well, yeah.
Interpreting it. Try to define it is the route you were going, which is, it might be materials, level of work, versus somebody else saying, I could get that done in a weekend. it's better to go towards these.
And
The new commissioner was saying, that is substantial. I would also look at it as, instead of focusing on substantial, we're in a historic district, you want to do the minimum necessary to change something. You know, you want to be minimalist about making changes to historic, either the character of things and the topography as well. So you might not be able to, well, it's minimal. I don't know. We could go there. And then to Commissioner Roberts' points about the drainage, again, there I would say what's necessary to correct the drainage, the minimal necessary. Don't just go to the whatever ends of changing the topography just because there might be a drainage issue. It's the minimal necessary.
I want to add a couple of things. We do review garden walls, but we don't say, we review landscape features a lot via minor work. But this wall is being created because they want to change the topography of the site. And I think when you're talking about that, you have to talk about all the aspects of, it's not just, it's kind of like when we talk about an accessory structure can't be 30%, more than 30% of the overall size of a primary structure. That's not just square footage, it's the massing, it's all the things combined. And so to me, when we're talking about topography, we're talking about the grade change, and we're talking about the square footage, and potentially whatever the material is if we're talking about building a wall, et cetera. So to me, I feel like you got to kind of look at all of those pieces together. And I think, to me, it's because it's such a large area, like over 600 square feet. It's a pretty big area to regrade, in my opinion, in Montford. So, I mean, the word substantial is subjective here. So I think it sounds like there are some folks that are interpreting that this is not a substantial change, and there are some that are. So I think maybe if the applicant wants to, they can separate out this piece if it seems like there's not consensus on this and/or the walkway, and maybe those can be voted on separately if there's consensus on the other things, if that.
There is. I think we have consensus on patio, I believe wall, and I believe a parking pad material that I forgot the name of. We all remember it but me. And I think there's a split leaning against you on walkway and topography. So your choice is to pull it for, one, change walkway if you have that authority, to change walkway to concrete, because you're changing parking pad to, and pull topography is one way to go forward and not have to submit another application.
My client said he would take whatever you all will give him, so,
Okay.
you know, if 3 out of 5 are
So I'm going to
approvable and
propose to
2 aren't,
you,
then.
I'm going to propose to you that the walkway either stay as is or replace with same
Well,
Okay.
he will understand that it needs to be replaced in concrete.
patio, good as it goes. Wall, thank you, you're doing the Lord's work there. And then parking pad, pine hall brick, and then topography. Let's just see if that your drainage will.
More research on that,
Yeah.
on another.
Does that sound okay? And the steps are all
Absolutely. I
fine?
mean, we
The steps,
we follow what you say.
the steps are the crab apple orchard,
Crab orchard.
Yeah.
They're really part of the patio. They're
It's already
egress from
there,
the
I
patio.
think,
It's already
right?
there.
All right,
It's
so let's not.
Not do, or just not going to do it.
Accept
Not
it.
do it, and then we'll, at some point, come back and see if there's another way that we can approach it that might be acceptable.
Okay, and then the sidewalk is staff, you get with staff and decide whether you're leaving the sidewalk as is or replacing it with like.
Temporarily, we'll leave it as is.
That's,
So for the purpose of this application, we'll do the items that you approve, and we will leave off the items that are
okay, we'll take that off your application. Walkway and topography.
You don't want to do anything.
not. I guess I better get him approved for concrete, yes. If concrete is approved, then let's
You
do.
don't have to do the work, so.
We don't have to do the work. Yes, he would like to be approved for that.
Is that a continuous pour concrete like the one
Yeah,
there?
it would be, taking it all out, forming it up exactly where it is.
Does it
same
have
dimensions.
expansion
It
joints?
gets expansion joint. I don't know, that's a good question. I don't know.
Expansion joints,
The
okay.
modern, you have that piece in there about modern codes and all that.
Okay, I think we can thank you so much for working with us, and thank all you commissioners for all your input, and I think this has been very helpful. Is someone ready to make a motion? Someone who likes reading?
Chairman, based upon the evidence presented on this commission, to this commission, including Exhibit A, application 4 pages, Exhibit B, site plans 2 pages, Exhibit C, photographs and descriptions of proposed work 12 pages, Exhibit D, Google Street View image added by staff June 27th, Exhibit E, additional images and proposal documents, 19 pages. Received July 9th, 2025. Exhibit F, Pine Hall brick images, 3 pages. Received July 9th, 2025. And the Commission's actual inspection and review of subject property by all members. I move that this commission approve the certificate of appropriateness based on the following. The application repair and replace existing concrete walkway in front yard with new concrete walkway in the same dimension, location, and configuration. After the fact, approval to remove a non-original deck on the rear elevation and to construct a mortared gray flagstone patio in the same location, plus replacement of existing brick steps in rear yard with mortared gray flagstone steps in same location. So should I read these things we're going to have as exceptions? Okay. Replace existing concrete retaining wall along eastern property boundary with new mortared stone retaining wall. Replace existing concrete driveway with new brick paver driveway, installation of French drain adjacent to west elevation. All work will be completed in accordance with attached and approved drawings and plans. All permits, variances, and approvals as required by law must be obtained before work may commence. 2, that the standards for walkways, driveways, and off-street parking found on pages 50 to 51, fences and walls on pages 36 to 37, and landscaping and trees on pages 40 to 41 of the Montfort Historic District Design Review Standards adopted on April 14th, 2010, and amended December 11th, 2019, elevate this request, to evaluate this request, sorry.
All right, can you hang on just 1 second? It looks like all of the reasons didn't get pasted into number 3, so hang on just a sec. Let me find that staff report real quick. I'm sorry. Let me make some up real quick.
Some commissions that have to know, like, pull out their own, the standards and know what they're going to say. We'll do it sometimes and go sort of the opposite way, but.
All right, thank you, sorry, go ahead.
There?
Oh, wait.
Do I refresh it?
No, I was typing them in the staff report.
Resuming, number 3, this application does meet the design standards for the following reasons. A, flagstone patio and steps are located in the rear yard and are compatible with the historic neighborhood in material and scale. B, location, configuration, and materials of intact character defining historic walkways and driveways are being retained and preserved. C, existing wall material is not historic and is being replaced with stone consistent with historic walls in the district. D, existing concrete driveway will be restored to previous brick material. 4, that the action and improvements proposed in the application before us for a certificate of appropriateness are congruous with the special historic character of the Montford Historic District.
Is there a second?
Second.
Based upon the foregoing.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Based upon the foregoing findings, and for the reasons set forth therein, I move that a certificate of appropriateness be issued with the following conditions. 1, brick material image will be submitted for staff review and approval for the driveway.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Can we just note for the record, I don't think we opened it to public comment, but there was nobody for public comment. Oh, you did?
Yeah, I think you did, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
With this team of lawyers sitting out here, you think I wouldn't do that?
So there was no mention in the motion of the topography change.
Right, because they took that out.
Took it out of the application, okay.
Thank
I'll
you
follow
for
up with
working
you
with
and
us
Shane.
and coming in.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your flexibility.
Yes, if you don't mind. Okay,
Mr.
perfect. Yep, that's it. Thank you so much. All right, have a good night.
Are there any other business?
Yes, I have a couple of things I want to note to you guys. I'm sorry, I'll be really fast.
Okay.
And this same house.
It's good news, so I just wanted to share with you. I went to the Biltmore Village Merchants Association today, along with Preservation Society staff and Drew. And if you haven't met Drew yet, Drew's our new amazing support person for HRC, new with our department. He was here last month, so I know some of you met him, but Drew and I were down there today with PSABC staff and SHPO staff to talk with them about updating the National Register nomination, which we talked through at the last meeting. And I think I talked through with both of you guys that was one of the projects we were trying to get underway. So that was great. It was very well received. They're excited for that. We've got to figure out how to bridge our funding gap. We've got about a $15,000 funding gap. So with all the bazillions of dollars floating around right now, I'm sure we can find 15 grand. So stay tuned. We're hoping to get that underway by the end of the summer. We already have the consultant on board. And an email that I got a little while ago is great news. I have put forth a project that I hadn't really talked to this group about yet, or really publicly, because I wasn't sure that was going to grow legs, but we were asked to put forth project proposals for our organizational work plan that are related to recovery. And one of the projects I put forth was the restoration of the public realm in Biltmore Village. And I had gotten some encouraging words over the past several weeks that there was support for that, and I got an email from our city manager's office, or specifically the person who's managing all of our recovery work for the city, that I got the green light to apply for the grant that we want to use for that project. And so will be a different kind of project for our department, because we don't normally do projects that result in capital improvements, but it will basically help fulfill the development plan that was adopted for the district in the 90s. So super excited. It will be like all the infrastructure improvements that we need, like restoring the brick sidewalks and streetlights and all of that. So yay. So fingers crossed that we'll get the grant. And I think that a lot of those folks are still up temporary power, but I'm not really 100% clear. It sounds like there's still some spottiness with streetlight stuff and all of that, so I don't really know what the plan is for temporary kind of public safety stuff. I do know that that's being talked about, and actually transportation oversees our streetlights, and so they requested a meeting with me yesterday to talk about the streetlights down there, so I imagine that's probably what it's to do, is talk about the fact that they aren't going to have power to the streetlights, at least for a while. So, yeah, but I think most people have temporary power at this point. The people that are already, have gotten their demo permits and everything to do their interior upfit. So things are moving along down there. I think Chemist Spirits place that's supposed to open right on Brook Street. They were hoping by the end of the year. There were a handful of people that said October is their goal to reopen. So, and all like Brook Street, all of that, 10 Brook Street, that big commercial building, all the like Chico's and Talbots and all that stuff, they're already doing drywall and everything on the interior. So they should be hopefully back online soon. So, and of course, I'm sure everybody saw the demo of the McDonald's that was all over the news, breaking people's hearts and making people make weird comments on social media that I will never understand, how people tie things together and make them very personal. But anyway, so that, there's lots of progress being made down there. So exciting. So anyways, I just want to share that good news with you all.
Any other comments from commissioners or the public? Then at 6:50, is there a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close the meeting?
Second.
Motion carries. All in favor?
Aye.
I have a gavel sack.
I'll call Biltmore too and just